Hello, everybody. Welcome back to 6 Degrees of Associations. I am your podcast producer and today's host, Casey Callanan. And I have the great pleasure of being joined by Wendy-Jo Toyama today. She is the CEO with the American Academy of Hospice and Palliative Medicine. And welcome to the show, first and foremost, Wendy.
Thanks, Casey. I would also just tag on there that we are a client of the Association Management Center. So we're one of about 28 clients there.
Very
good. I'm excited to chat with you today. Thanks for inviting me, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this one for a while, and I want to just kick the conversation off by getting the origin story of Wendy-Jo Toyama, CEO now. But how did it start? How did you find associations, or how did associations find you?
Yeah, I think it might be Michelle Mason who's trying to change the narrative around, the fact that so many of us kind of fall into this. And I think she's working with her staff to change it to a calling instead of a falling, which I love that. I did not start out in associations. I started out in a corporate setting. I was a graphic designer initially at Tribune Company. This was back in the day when newspapers were the thing. And, and so I did advertising art for them and decided I wanted to be more strategic. So I went back, got my MBA. Tribune paid 80% of it. And then when I was done with that in the early 90s, I really wanted to advance in at Tribune, and the opportunities for someone who looked like me were limited. So I went out into the nonprofit space and found it to be a very rich environment for women and people of color, especially identify as Asian American. And was able to land initially with a very small nonprofit children's museum, a little bit too much of a change, but eventually landed from there in my first association, which was the YMCA of Metropolitan Chicago. And I loved it. I just loved that associations were mission driven. I loved that we worked with the board and we helped the board achieve the vision. It was an opportunity for me to bring my business expertise to nonprofit management, which was great. And so I kind of found my space, if you will. And then it probably wasn't until I moved on from there to the American Dental Association, a very large association where I learned a lot about governance and had a bird's eye view on everything that happens in association world. But, the ADA wasn't particularly involved in ASAE. And I remember going to my first ASAE meeting and feeling like, oh my gosh, these are my people. Like, it was very crazy for me. So I've worked at 4 associations, 2 as the CEO. So after the ADA, I went to a very small, actually independent association. And it was the American Cleft Palate and Craniofacial Association. And that was actually a leap of faith. I'd wanted to be a CEO. I interviewed in 5 states. I think I really was open to being flexible on location, size, and pay. And so ended up landing there. But it took some time for me to find the CEO role. I'm not going to lie. It took a lot of time. So.
Yeah. Did you ever think you were going to get there? Was that what you set out for? Or tell me more about what your mindset was.
I didn't set out to be a CEO, Casey. So that's an interesting question. I loved marketing, and that's what my MBA was in, and that's what I was going to do. And it wasn't until I was at an association women's event, actually, that someone asked me, when are you going to be a CEO? And I hadn't thought of it before. And so I started to explore that. And I think I realized that, one, I was strategic. I loved working with boards. I'm a servant leader. Service is one of my values. My values are creativity, courage, service, justice, and family. And the opportunity to really work with a board and work at the highest level in an entity, and also to be able to influence the culture, were really, really appealing to me. So I began to look for a CEO job because the ADA typically doesn't hire a non-dentist to be the CEO. So. And I had to interview a lot. Let's just leave it at that. Took a while. You have to be persistent. But it wasn't what I initially thought I wanted to do. And it's not for everybody. But I ended up I enjoy working with the board and setting that strategy and tone and culture in an organization.
Yeah, let's set the tone now. I want to know a little bit more about your association. First of all, American Academy of Hospice and Palliative Medicine. How many members are we talking? And staff, full-time staff. I'm always curious about that too. As an association professional myself, I always like to compare and contrast. Oh, your association is this big. Oh, this, I kind of gives a general idea. It doesn't tell the full story, but I am curious.
Yeah, so we're an interdisciplinary association. We have about 5,300 members. It includes physicians as well as nurses, chaplains, social workers, PAs, pharmacists, the interdisciplinary team that might work on a palliative care and hospice team. We have because we're at an AMC, we're a fairly large client with an $8 million budget. We have about 17 fully dedicated staff and about 30 FTEs, give or take. But that's kind of us. I think I checked all the boxes.
Yes, you did. You answered the census question there. So I appreciate that. Tell me more about your leadership style, because is making connections with people really important to you? Because I can just say, before we recorded here, I know that you were like, well, we could jump into it and just talk as two strangers, but you really took the time to get to know me on a personal level. And I'm curious if that is kind of your leadership style, making connections, getting to know your staff and your membership base and all that.
Yeah, I think, you've captured one facet of it for sure. I think for CEOs, especially, a lot of the job is external. And a lot of what you do is relational and supportive of ensuring that everybody else can get their work done. I think as a leader, I will say I'm very dedicated to creating opportunities for folks who have historically been minoritized or marginalized groups, creating space so all voices are heard. I've been dedicated to DEI throughout my career. Starting at Tribune in the 90s when I was on a corporate diversity committee. So it's a passion of mine that I bring everywhere I go. And so I think that's always, I think part of getting to know people is about being inclusive, making sure folks feel seen and heard. I think as a leader, my job is really to connect the board and the strategic plan with the staff and make sure we have the resources to accomplish that. And then to help the staff, identify barriers, help remove the barriers, make sure they have resources and help prioritize. But really, I want to set the vision with the board and then get out of their way and let people rise to show to the best of their ability.
A leadership style is influenced by the physical location of your staff. Are you fully remote, hybrid? How is your setup?
Well, this is the $24,000 question these days. So I started this job in April of 20, which was crazy. At the time, everyone's like, oh my God, what's it like to start remote? Which now people would laugh at, right? But then it was very unique. The Association Management Center, one of the things I loved is they listened to staff. They thought a lot about safety. We really didn't come back into the office till April of 22. And when we came back in, it was once a week at that point in time. Now it's once a month. I was remote moving to Chicago. I didn't move. So now I'm remote to my staff. And I come into Chicago once a month to be there with them. So I think that culture happens whether you're in an office or not. And it's incumbent on leaders to create and steward that culture. And I'm really proud. We recently did a Gallup engagement survey, and our staff was really engaged on some of the higher level things in there, like feeling supported and feeling like we care about their professional development. So I think that the culture that AMC has created is sort of AMC anywhere, right? And so really being able to compete for talent. And, I think we've learned in the pandemic that staff can be productive, and they can be productive at home. They can be productive at the third space. They can be productive in the office. And if someone's not productive, they're probably not productive in the office anyway. So, so I think finding a culture that allows flexibility and allows us to compete for talent, I think has really set AMC apart. And then I think our own client, my association, it's full of people that are relational, right? And so it's a group that is high emotional intelligence, checking in on people. So yeah, I think as a baby boomer, I was skeptical about working remote. And then the moment we flipped, I was concerned about staff. I was concerned they weren't setting boundaries, turning off at the end of the day. So I think we're learning a lot. And I think we as a culture, society, haven't landed on what the new work looks like. I miss the office. I'm not going to lie. I find myself missing it a lot lately now, 4 years later. If I were in Chicago, I would go in a little more often than, once or twice a month. I'd probably be in once or twice a week, 2 or 3 times a week. But that's why talking to you is fun.
So many things here. And as an association professional, I jump to, well, tell me about your annual meeting. Is that a big focus that you guys look for? Is there more than one meeting a year? Like, I know that with a, medical specialty society, you do see, as someone who's worked for one, it's all about education and getting people together for that. For us, it was at the AUA where I worked, was that big annual meeting was huge. I mean, that was everything for us. Tell me about what kind of the marquee events are with your association.
Yeah, so we do an annual assembly, as many medical associations, as you've stated. It's once a year. We do it jointly now with our Hospice, HPNA, Hospice Palliative Care Nurses Association. We canceled 2, actually. So we had a March 20 meeting, so that was canceled. I'm getting the years messed up, but every year that I've been there, the meeting's been different, is the point that I'm trying to make. We've only been back in person twice. And what we've been doing, again, one of the things we like about an omni-channel meeting is that it allows greater inclusion for those who can't get to an in-person meeting for economic, family, ability, whatever reason. So we're trying to keep some hybrid aspects to the meeting. And of course, hybrid is different. There's no one way to do it. So we do that. It's a great opportunity to bring together the profession. We get about 2,500, 2,000 in person, 1,000 virtual, roughly, I think is what we did last time. And again, it's interdisciplinary. So it's great, because our profession, everybody trains here, does fellowship here, resident, they know each other and they're not necessarily in the same place anymore. So that's lovely. And then we have I like to say we have a nice pie. So our revenue streams are diverse and create a nice picture. So we do typically one other in-person event. It's in the summer. It's usually some type of review course and clinical course. It's much smaller, several hundred. It was driven at one point in time by the test, right? But now long-term knowledge assessment is in place. So that's changing. So we typically produce 2 in-person opportunities to get together. To answer your question about that.
Yeah.
And it is a group that likes to get together.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, as someone with a marketing background and someone, graphic design, are you a good delegator? Do you sometimes feel like, oh, I got to be involved in the marketing side? Or tell me more about, the day-to-day leadership style.
Yeah, I think that's a question that was probably better asked to one of my staff people, right? One of my team members. But, I think that my strengths are very strategic, so I'm not inclined to dabble in the details. So I think that helps me kind of stay out of that a little bit. I think my style on the marketing side, it's very interesting you ask. So I have a lot of opinions on how things look, and I don't usually express them because I know that that's not my job and that there are other people doing that. And so I work pretty hard to not be the creative director, if you will, although sometimes I can't help myself. And I think my style is to really empower my staff to be able to do their job and be successful and be show up the best way they can be. And so a lot of that is, you noted, relational right at the beginning. But also, understanding what I need to do to help facilitate their work. I honestly think one of the hardest things about being a CEO, it's a little like being on a tight wire. You cannot you can't possibly read everything and know everything. And you just have to trust that, that sign-on letter that your policy committee's been working over with your advocacy person and consultant, that they've done their job. And if I have time to read it, I will. And if I don't, they're doing their job. So that's really hard. That's very hard, I think. So it's an astute question. I like to think I don't direct the day-to-day. But again, you'd have to ask my team.
Definitely. No, that's fair. That's very fair. So if you were speaking today to a young association professional that's listening and wants to be the next Wendy-Jo Toyama, they are maybe a mid-level marketing professional right now in the association space and wants to be a CEO, like what was the most important learning opportunities? Yes, there's so much I know you have to learn on the job and experience, but what other learning opportunities did you take advantage of to get to where you're at and be able to do what you do effectively? I'm thinking like mentorships or certifications, continuing education. Where would you start?
Well, I think the MBA was indispensable. Not everyone can go and do that, and it does matter where you get it from. But if you're toying with getting an MBA, go do it now. Like the sooner you do it, the better. And I think that the credential, it does set you apart. I think more people in associations need to bring a business perspective to the dialogue. So I think it's a functional asset as well as something that looks good on your resume. And it should be, because it's a lot of work. So I think if you're thinking about doing it, great. But it's not for everyone, right? So I would say beyond that, I was not initially going to get my Certified Association Executive CAE from ASAE, but I had a mentor who encouraged me to do so. I didn't think I needed it because I had an MBA. So for those of you out here who have an MBA and think I don't need my CAE, I'll tell you what my mentor said, which was, you do. It demonstrates your commitment to the field. And I thought, And I will say that I did a study course, which was very beneficial. I met some of my dearest association colleagues that I still call on today in that study course. And I was able to take what I was learning through the course and apply it. So I think it's very worthwhile. So I think that is important. I will also say I did not get involved in my association when I was young. I was a single mother for a while. I didn't really have that time outside of work. And our association wasn't that involved, but I would highly encourage folks to get involved in a professional association, whether it's the state level ASAE or PCMA or AFP, if you're a fundraiser. Like I think there's a lot of benefit to building a network, learning leading practices, having organizations you can benchmark with. I think that's very valuable. The other thing I would say, Casey, is my career has not been a straight line. I'm pretty open about discussing the fact that I've been in transition twice. And, I think that when you're in transition, that's an opportunity. You may be offered outplacement. You should take advantage of it. You're not working, so you have more time to build your network and to think about going and getting a certificate on diversity, equity, and inclusion, or on AI. So these are, these are little breaks that can actually enhance your knowledge base and to take advantage of it. So those are just a few of the things I would offer. I don't know if I answered your question, but.
You did, very much so. And it's very inspirational to see someone like yourself with all these certifications and graduate degrees, MBA, FASAE, CAE. These take time and dedication and sacrifice, and to put on top of it the fact that you've reached the CEO level, and you said just now, you were a single mom as well. I think your story, that says a lot for other people that need to hear someone else has done this, and your path was not easy, and they can do it too.
Right.
So
right.
I really appreciate you being so candid with us.
Yeah.
So moving it to a little lighter side of things, let me hear about something you look forward to every year as CEO of American Academy of Hospice and Palliative Medicine. What is the one thing that you really look forward to?
It's hard to pick one thing. I'm going to say our fall board meeting. We meet with our new board at our annual assembly. And annual assembly is a very busy time. And so what I like about our fall board meeting is it stands alone. It's my opportunity to really build those relationships with our board. We typically do a generative session on a timely topic, and we'll also do some sort of social event. And I think, at assembly, it's like meeting people on steroids, and there's so much happening. Whereas at the fall board meeting, there's a little more time and space to be able to just breathe and build the relationships and focus on moving the work forward. So I think I would say the fall board meeting, although, I'm sure I could pick any number of other things, but that's my quick answer.
Definitely. And, I always want to give our guests the opportunity to add anything else of value for, that maybe I failed to mention or ask you about that you think our listeners would benefit from hearing if, they're looking to kind of carve their own path in a similar way you did. Is there anything else you wanted to make mention of before we wrap it up here?
Well, I think an association profession is a very rich career path. I'm passionate about trying to bring more folks into the profession. And what I would say is, I think that folks can be successful in many different roles and ways. So you don't have to be the CEO to enjoy a rich association path. That's not necessarily what everyone wants to do. But I think what is important is that you really find a place that aligns with your values. And I think if you are at an association and you don't feel like it aligns with your values, then, think about what is working for you there and take advantage of that. And then think about trying to find a place that does align with your values. Because when you are working in a passion-driven association with people, both on the staff and the volunteer side, that bring passion to the role, and it aligns with your values, you can really feel your impact in a way that makes your role meaningful to the mission of the organization. So I think that that's important, is to know what your values are, take time to define them, and then try to find an organization where it aligns with them. I think that's important.
All right. Well, we'll let that be the mic drop moment for us here on today's episode of 6 Degrees of Associations. It wouldn't be a 6 Degrees of Associations episode if I did not ask, is there someone in your network or community that you think our listeners would benefit from hearing from as well?
Of course. There's so many folks. I'm going to talk for a moment about the ASAE's Asian American Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander Advisory Group. It's been very powerful to be involved with this group. And we are underrepresented in associations. So in the population, Asians are about 7%, fastest growing population. Within associations, as near as we can tell, we're at about 4%. So I'd love it if you would speak to someone from our group. And Don D is our founder. He might be an interesting person to talk to. He's the one who brought us all together. Rita Chen Fujisawa was just named a fellow. She's in our group and has been on ASAE board. She might be someone interesting to talk to. So those are just two names from our group that, but there's so many people. We can talk afterwards too. But those are the two that I would name for today.
We will bring this offline. Those two are fantastic, and that is where we will start. So I appreciate all your time, all your wisdom, all your insight, and your candidness. This was a great interview. Wendy-Jo Toyama, she is the CEO with American Academy of Hospice and Palliative Medicine. Thank you so much.